guys are better.
He's so physical. I rely on my fingers.
Welcome, everybody. Man, this is great. It's so wonderful having you guys here, and I appreciate you being here kind of early in the morning, 10 o'clock. You guys, no, this is great. Look at this turnout. Man, this is amazing. We still have people filing in. All right, so I'm going to do just a couple of questions, and then we'll go to questions from the audience pretty quick here, because I know you guys probably have quite a few. We've got microphones out here. If you guys have questions, please come up to the mics and get in line. We'll take turns. Please limit it to one question, because I know there's a lot of people here that have things they want to ask these guys. So let's jump in. Star Wars is back, right? Yeah. How cool is that? Yeah, big time. You know, Ian, you've been here since the first trilogy, and you know, one of the things that's, you know, I guess, yeah, I date myself here a little bit. So, you know, I grew up watching Star Wars. I was 6 when the first movie came out, so, and I was right at that age where it blew my mind and really changed everything for me. And so, you know, especially from that first trilogy, it's amazing. It's so great to be here with you. One of the things I think is remarkable about you, the role that you played, when you did the Emperor in Return, you were actually pretty young, right?
I was a kid of 39, I think.
Right? I say young because I'm in my 40s.
Yeah. So no, I had to become a 120-year-old overnight.
Young for a
It's not that difficult, really. You know the right things to take. It's fine.
Right, and so it's kind of interesting that it worked out that with the prequel trilogy, you were aged naturally enough to just play yourself without the prosthetics.
Exactly. It was nice to go forwards in order to go backwards, and backwards in order to go forwards, you know. It was very zany, but it wasn't George's plan. It all happened by a whole series of coincidences, but lucky ones for me. Oh, and by the way, welcome to the dark side.
You know, in a lot of ways, the start of the prequel trilogy in '99, you know, Ray, that's where you got involved, but also the following year with X-Men, when you got involved, you know, you were Toad in X-Men. That was that '99-2000 period where the rings came out. That was really kind of this resurgence of the mainstreaming of all of science fiction and genre fiction and superhero stuff that we're at today, 16 years later, you know, and you guys were right there at the cutting edge of this resurgence of, you know, all of this stuff. That's a pretty amazing thing. What was that like for you, you know, coming in? You had those two movies right there in a row, back to back, '99 and 2000, now getting involved in this sort of thing, coming from a martial arts background.
Just reliving my childhood, everything that I fantasized as a kid. You know, I didn't really read the comics, I just looked at the pictures and then wanted to just reenact things that I would see, and you know, the imagination got wild with moves that you'd want to do. And I got to work on Sleepy Hollow in between, before Phantom came out, and got to work with him.
That's right.
So that was like mind blowing for me, and to work with Tim Burton, and you know, the costume was great. And I was reading the Lord of the Rings book at the time.
Oh, okay.
So that whole time, you know, it was just very spooky and mystery for me at the time.
It was, I mean, it's almost like a perfect storm of all these things coming together at that time. Now, you obviously you come from a martial arts background, a very extensive martial arts background. The lightsaber duel scene in Phantom Menace is often talked about as just one of the great choreographed sword fights in all of cinematic history. So I'm curious, because of your background, how much of a role did you actually play in the choreography in that scene?
I was 22 and very grateful to be allowed to play this villain. I always knew I wanted to do stunts and acting and action, and kind of like Jackie Chan. And I was always pinching myself, waiting for the day that I was going to get fired. You know, I just couldn't wait to get in front of the camera and be Darth Maul. So it was an exciting time for me. And Nick Gillard was the stunt coordinator, so he was like the master as well. Ian's the master. But with Nick, I just listened, and you knew when to sort of speak up or show a move. And I remember Nick saying to me, because I wanted to show some flamboyant twists and spins with the lightsaber, and he said, "Look, Ray, you're playing Darth Maul, so anything you want to do as Maul, just bring it to the table. So it was really nice to, and it was a team effort. We all worked together on it, and I was just on a ride. I was enjoying it.
It's a spectacular sequence, and it really is.
Thank you.
Ian, your role in Venom is, it had to be difficult. You're playing almost two characters, essentially, and that had to be difficult, but you pulled it off flawlessly. It was great.
Well, it was very intriguing. I mean, when you know you're somebody pretending to be somebody else, that's always very, very exciting to play. And George just said from the outset on the prequels, he said, he's just a straightforward politician. Can you put those two phrases together? Anyway, he did, and I knew what he meant. He said, you know, just be Mr. Nice Guy, like they all are, and then explode into something else, like they all do.
It's kind of an interesting character arc too, the whole Palpatine role. That you know, especially the political season, it makes you you rethink that role. It makes you think about things. I'm not going there. Just throw that out.
Up to a point.
You're right. Okay, so let me ask you this. We talked about Star Wars coming back, and things are different now in that, especially with the new movie coming out with Rogue One. This opens up the possibility. They're doing a Han Solo movie of setting films at various points in the Star Wars chronology, which of course opens up the possibility for some of your characters to come back.
Well, it seems the Empire is very much in evidence. So maybe one day we'll be called back, even summoned from the dead. I don't see why not.
Well.
To perform natural functions, if that's the right expression. But I have no news for you at the moment. But I've got my phone in my pocket.
So you are really unavailable if that were to come up. Well, Ray, Darth Maul is officially alive again in canon. Right? You guys which makes it, even more possible. Maybe they could do something. I know you've been quoted as saying you'd love to revisit Darth Maul if you got the chance. Is that a possibility? Do you think?
There's always hope.
Yeah.
There's always a possibility. Yes.
Would you prefer to do a younger sort of an origin story of Darth Maul, or you want to do later Darth Maul with the robotic legs?
I don't care as long as it's me.
Yeah.
I actually thought Darth Maul was never coming back until I watched Clone Wars.
Right.
And I've said this before, but I said to my son, I said, buddy, Daddy's going to have to start training harder again. So it's nice to be able to, it's like the golden carrot, and of course I always think about coming back as Snake Eyes and how to do that. It's nice to come back for a second time. And so I'd love to come back as Toad, I'd love to come back with all the characters, because you've had time to digest, to think about it. And of course I would love to be Darth Maul. I'd love to do it if it was me, and it better be me, I hope so. The shirtless, tattooed, it'd be nice. And I like what they've done in Rebels with the character as well. I like seeing that.
So you've been training?
I always shirtless. I'm training, I'm picking this up.
All right, so if you guys were able to revisit the roles, is there any particular period that you'd like to do, Ian? What do you think?
Well, in the early days before George decided to move on and sell the company, there was talk about it, but there's no new information coming up, I'm sorry to say, about the evil emperor's backstory, because I imagine he was just a solid block of nastiness. But apparently, like us all, he had a troubled psychological childhood. So the only thing is, I am now too old to explore that. There's the irony. But I'm sure there are other actors around who can do that. Maybe I can take over a bit later and so on. But that would be fascinating. But the great thing about the anthology series, Rogue One, etc., is that they're set during that period, when he's coming to grips with what it is to enjoy power. So there is potentially a lot to explore.
Yeah, it seems like a series with the Emperor and Vader hunting down the Jedi. Something like that would be pretty dark, but...
Yes. Well, there have been a few cartoon versions of the possibilities of that, which I think we probably see. And their relationship has been realized very well in comic terms. but I think it could probably be even more interesting in serious terms when they have, because they sort of have equal power. And when two people are sort of in that position, then a kind of rivalry naturally develops, and that would be interesting to explore.
Well, I know we're going to get a lot of Star Wars questions, so let me ask you one that's not Star Wars. What projects are you guys working on now? Since Star Wars, we all know about that, right? What do you have coming up?
Nothing, I'm unemployed. I'm working on myself.
You don't have anything in the hopper, huh?
There's hopefuls, there's possibilities, and there's always something that may happen, and someone say, hey, I'd love you to do this, can you read this and read that? So there's stuff, you know, I'm excited about the possibility of things that may happen.
Cool. Ian?
I've just started to work on a new television series which we're filming in Prague, about which I am not allowed to say nothing, so I'm going to say a little. I have to be careful because my contract could be terminated, and probably I could, you know. The way things are these days. It's called Britannia, and it's set in ancient Britain when the Romans invaded for the second time, so there are Celts and Romans and Druids, and that's as far as I can go really. But we're all being Celts and Romans and Druids in very nice parts of the Czech Republic. So I reckon you have to wait about a year to see the beginnings of that. But, you know, could be a new, exciting series. Let's hope.
Okay, cool. On a personal note, my background is actually in Roman archaeology, so I am very intrigued. That sounds awesome, actually. Okay. All right. Well, I know we got lots of questions, so let's pitch this out to the audience. We're going to make sure you do mine. Yep. Who's first there?
Yeah, we can tell us to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's helpful if people sit down so the people behind them can see.
Sure.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
So, hi. Thank you for coming. My question is for Ian, and I just wanted to quickly say I love Emperor Palpatine. I love a villain who loves his work.
Thank you.
And my question for you is, since you were a part of both trilogies, from an acting perspective or a personal growth perspective or whatever perspective you want, because you're the emperor, you can do what you want. How is it different between the two trilogies for you?
Well, the technology had advanced a great deal, which was, I mean, George was ready to do the prequels when he felt the technology was ready to take them further, and he could continue to be pioneering in the whole world of digital cinema. And I suppose the biggest difference I noticed straight away was when you do a scene, and it's called the video village, everyone instantly sees what you've done, whereas usually they have to wait a few days for the rushes, and sometimes the print has to be changed and so on. So that meant that everything could move faster, which had its advantages, but also its disadvantages, because you really had to be on the ball. But it was a great opportunity for me, as I said earlier, to explore how this person had evolved. And as you probably know, George, you know, didn't tell me much, which was fine. You don't need to know too much. But he talked about this other character called Darth Sidious. I thought that sounds like a really good part. I wish I could play that. And when I got the script, there was, I don't know if he was referred to as DS or something like that. And my number, you get a number when you do a movie or a television series, 12 or something, was opposite. And I thought, this is a mistake. So I said to the first lady, I'm sorry, you've got me down for the first day as DS. He said, no, that's you. And then slowly the penny dropped. But it didn't drop for a lot of people. Liam Neeson on the premiere, he said, it was you bastard, you didn't tell me. I hardly knew myself. So that was why the second time was more fun than the first, but the first was more fun of all because it, as you know, it came out of the blue. It was supposed to be an older, probably better actor who was in the part, but he couldn't be insured because he couldn't take the rather difficult contact lens. So one lunchtime, I suddenly found myself in the middle of the Star Wars universe.
Thank you.
My question is more to Ian, but to both of you. I haven't read the book, so I don't know if this is a thing, but do you guys plan to have children that you eventually have? Because there's like a theory that Rey is your granddaughter, Chancellor Palpatine's, and it's an interesting theory, so.
It's a very interesting and diverse theory. Ray, is that true?
Rey from Force Awakens, sorry.
Okay, the second part of your question? No, I know nothing about the Palpatine relationships, really. There's a little clue in the Sith when Darth Plagueis gets mentioned. But as you probably know, in that scene, he's at the theatre, and at the theatre people get overreact and get hysterical, so it probably doesn't mean anything.
Alright, thank you.
My question is to Ray. When you were Darth Maul, what was the most exhilarating part when you were acting?
Oh, good question, buddy. Doing the lightsaber battles, that was a lot of fun to do. With the contact lenses in, it was hard to see. Like I would see it just in front of me. So my role was the guys Liam and Ewan, and orange and blue and green. It was a lot of fun to sort of, use some of my gymnastics and wushu in a fight. And Star Wars was the first movie I saw on a big screen as a kid when I was 7, so it changed my life for me. It got me into martial arts and gymnastics. Do you practice any martial arts or gymnastics or sports?
I used to.
You used to?
Well, you grown out of it.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, how you doing? It's funny because I was 6 years old when Phantom Menace came out, and my parents took me to see it open day, and Ray Park, you're actually one of my influences on why I continue to pursue martial arts. So I want to thank you for that. We all remember that scene. And for Star Wars fans out there, episode 1 is my favorite, so whatever, despite what you guys think, whatever. No, but quick question. We all remember that scene in that corridor when Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi are going, and the door opens and you're standing there with your cloak on. And how much pressure was it on you to carry that scene the way it was? Because it is probably the greatest fight scene in all the Star Wars episodes.
Thinking back, I was in the moment and enjoying it. I had Nick Gillard and Andreas Petridis around me, so I had good support. But it was the first time, for me, in my mind, whenever you see the character, I'm thinking, thank God I've got to get this cloak off. Because it was pretty tricky to fight with a cloak on, and the original one was tailored beautiful. It was beautiful, but it was heavy. So they had to come up with a stunt version. So when we did, Liam and I were in the desert fighting, it was tricky. The fight had to be choreographed in a way, these big sleeves and wrapping around. I felt like the Wicked Witch of the West. After each shot of me, then put my cloak up. But to do that in battle scene and then take that off and to see more, it had to be something kind of cool, like I wanted to use the Force to bring the lightsaber into my hand. So it was like a wushu moment for me. It had to be very wushu and related to me, and that was where that all came out from the doubling.
Thank you.
And plus Liam and Ewan they were big kids as well. They were making their lightsaber noises, so I couldn't help it. It's that moment. Keep up your training on it.
Yeah.
To me, as spectacular as it seems, one of the best parts is when it's interrupted for the brief moment when you've got the force field and you're doing the pacing back and forth.
That's the best.
That's just so intense and so perfect, and right there in the center of the fight scene where, I love that. I just love that scene.
Originally, because I had rehearsed it with Liam, and I rehearsed the fight, thank you.
Yeah.
I rehearsed, and so the Force, he goes down into his lotus position, starts meditating. I'm going, what's he doing? Why is he doing this? And I was like, alright, so I started sliding down to box splits like Van Damme. Trying to get any Van Damme moment in there, sliding down, I'm sitting there, and then George goes, cut. No, and that's when George came up to me and said, I want something more like like a caged animal.
It's like a caged tiger.
Yeah, and I said, like a tiger. And he goes, yeah. And I'm the year of the tiger, so I was like, alright.
Sorry, I'm nervous.
Don't worry, the spotlight's on you.
If you didn't get casted for Star Wars, or if you never got involved with it somehow, how would you have, what would you have done? Like, what other shows or castings, what would you have done, or that kind of thing? And how long did it take you to get into makeup and everything during the
Yeah, well, so I probably just would have continued my theatre career and hoped the odd interesting movie turned up now and again. I guess that's the answer to that question. The second part of your question, the first time getting in that makeup, it was about 4 hours, slightly more than that. It was very detailed. Mcdiarmid was the genius responsible for it, who went on to do even greater things. He was head of creatures makeup and everything on Harry Potter, as I'm sure you know. And then it got a little easier with the prequels, because they made a sort of balaclava thing. It just went over my head and then they stuck that in. And that took about 2 hours. But they both took about 2.5 hours to get off every day. But it was, what did I have to do? I just sat there, and it was early in the morning, so I'd probably be asleep. And the guy said that was the best thing you could do. So, where's the pain?
Thank you.
Other than Star Wars, what was your other favorite movie that you did?
You want to do that one? Interesting movie.
They've all been different experiences. The worst experience for me is sitting in my trailer. I like to be out there doing it, and they've all been different. With G.I. Joe, I've got to use more of my martial arts background, and Action Man, G.I. Joe were the first toys when I was like 3, 4, 5, because my dad was a big kid anyway, and he had younger brothers, and they were they'd buy me Batman toys. So I grew up with like Action Man, so Snake Eyes was one of those roles that I had to go and audition for. I wanted to get this. It was like my childhood, and starting with Star Wars as well, my two childhood things. So they've all been different, and as you get older they change as well, and the action gets a little harder as well. You need 4 hours to warm up instead of 10 minutes. But my kids love just all the free food. They like going in, they don't care about the movies and the camera and the action. They're like, okay, where's the biscuits and where's the chocolates and the crisps?
Where's the food truck? Yeah, it's always the first question. I suppose, like Ray, I've been lucky enough to play a lot of different kinds of parts, so that's the most interesting thing. But you mentioned Sleepy Hollow that you were in. That was great fun. Mainly because of the bunch of guys I worked with who were all hysterically funny. It was very hard for us to keep a straight face. Johnny Depp was no help whatsoever. So I really liked that. And another film that was a lot of fun, The Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, with Michael Caine, Steve Martin. And Steve slipped me, I think I'm allowed to say this now, it was the time of the writer's strike, so I'm very careful. He slipped me a couple of my best lines, which I really enjoyed saying. I think I can remember what they were. Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, is there anyone who hasn't seen the movie? There's a scene where this crazy person in my character's mind, played by Steve, arrives at the hotel, and I say, "Welcome to hell." Because that's what I hope I'm going to put him through. And then he wrote that line. Then later on, because my character is so irritated with his behavior, finally I just say, "Oh, shut up." And that was a good line to say, and, especially to someone I knew had just written it.
You were in Dragon Slayer too, weren't you?
Sorry?
You did Dragon Slayer too.
I did.
I love that movie.
That was the first film I was almost going to say I was ever in. It's the first film I'm prepared to admit that I was in. And that was very exciting because I was incinerated by a dragon. And it was almost the case. And I was quite looking forward to it because it made a cast in my head, but I had to go through the thing in front of the camera. And they said, "Yeah, it's going to be fine, flamethrowers just up there, just above your head, and we might do it a couple of times, but no more than that. Okay, good luck." And then I looked around the studio and I saw every protecting the seat. And I was in my father, what's his name? Jack or something. Anyway, he was a deeply religious person, so I was in a deeply religious, frock. And I thought, well, I suppose I could catch fire. But it would be an interesting way to go. Anyway, they did release the flame, and it certainly was the hottest moment of my life. And they only did it twice, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, when Al did a song for the Star Wars too. So what do you think about that?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get it.
When Al did a song for the Star Wars.
Weird Al. When Weird Al did a song for Star Wars, what was your opinion on it?
Oh, right. Oh, yes. Sorry, the world is sort of alien to me. Speaking of an alien, so I can't really comment on it, I don't really know it. But the thing I liked about Star Wars, and indeed about George's generosity, was that there are so many things that, winged off as a result of it. And entertaining in all sorts of different ways. I say like a song, or like these comic cartoon series that have gone on. And George was always happy, like the guys knew what they were doing, to let that happen. And now, of course, that's a sort of general explosion. I think it's very nice to not take what you're doing entirely seriously and be able to allow yourself to be made fun of. It doesn't mean to say that the work itself is not serious and important, but it just means that we have a lighter approach to things, which I really like.
This question is for both Ian and Ray. Both. I wonder, given the fact that Star Wars is such a global cultural pop phenomenon, what kind of interesting or odd ways has being part of this Star Wars universe affected your lives, in the most unusual or interesting ways?
I wouldn't say weird or because I'm here now and for the last 16 years, I doubled for Raid on Mortal Kombat Annihilation before Phantom Menace, but my life is what it is because of Star Wars. The opportunities that I got, X-Men and Sleepy Hollow, and I'm sure everything else is because of Star Wars. Auditions that I get is because I was the bad guy, Phantom Menace, and they want me to do martial arts for a short little bit in this or a TV show. So I don't know. I'm very grateful for him. I'm grateful for George for allowing this 22-year-old kid squeaky around the ears, be Darth Maul, and just to live my dreams. So it's been a lot of fun. I've got to travel the world. I've got to do Star Wars weekends. I've got to be here. When a friend of mine, Nathan, who's one of the PAs on the set, and he said, your life is going to change now. You're going to be traveling the world, going to conventions. And I'm like, what's a convention? I was so used to doing martial art competitions and around other martial artists. And so I never thought I'd be doing this way back 15 years ago. And I love it. I like doing it. And I like to talk about martial arts. And if something positive can come out of me playing a bad guy, and little kids are running around and want to be Darth Maul and do martial arts and do something positive, I think it's great. So I was kind of worried about that.
Yeah, I suppose my life changed in all sorts of ways, some of which you could probably predict. But the great thing about Return of the Jedi was I was completely unrecognizable as me. So I could go on leading my normal, boring life, unmolested, as it were, in a nice way or in a not so nice way. But the minute I was revealed to look a little bit like I did with the addition of a hairpiece in the prequels, life did change fairly considerably. In pleasant ways, particularly, I lived in London and in Scotland, but I was recognised, and that makes a difference. Of course you want to be recognised for your work, but sometimes you don't want to be recognised for yourself in the street. So it could get a little heavy at times, but by and large not, because I think the whole series, well, it's people like you. They respond they're the kind of people who respond in a certain kind of way. And George's whole ethos is about a kind of generosity towards young people. So it's never really been a problem. Also, most of my life was spent in the theatre, and it continues to be so. So that's in a sense where my home is. And Star Wars is this sort of, I won't call it an additional extra, but it's this amazing, phenomenally unexpected part of my life. And it's great, I'm sure Ray feels this too, to be as it were in on the beginning of these kind of films, which George overnight revolutionized. A lot of people think that's not for the good. I don't, because I'm looking at all kinds of films at all kinds of times. And he tapped into something. And as we've recently seen on Force Awakens, those films are still tapping. And to be part of that is pretty extraordinary.
If you had one Star Wars character to pick as a politician, who would it be?
Character to pick as a politician.
Yeah, well, it would be Jar Jar Binks.
What's Canopy?
That's a good one, I can't top that.
Yeah, Scott.
Are you He-Man? We dressed up as Buddy Got Muscles.
I'm Cable from X-Men.
Ah, cool. Oh, yeah. See guns.
First, I just want to say it's extremely surreal for me being in front of you guys.
It's surreal for me to be in front of you.
I just wanted to ask for both of you, and you, of course, first, being in the original trilogy and the pioneer days of filmmaking, and seeing how everything was made on practical sets, and then going to George Lucas's way of digital filmmaking, of creating, stuff you couldn't create back then. How was it going from that sort of practical filmmaking to digital work for both of you?
Yeah. Do you want to say something? No? Well, I think of an answer. It is interesting. It didn't affect me as much as it affected some of the other guys. I think because I had this very strong plot line, which we didn't reveal, except everybody knew, because you're not stupid. These two people had to kill less, as one at one point. But watching the others sometimes, I used to feel a bit sorry for the younger guys, like you and Natalie and Hayden, because and they're all very skillful actors. And also the two guys, I dare say Natalie too, I don't know, were very skillful fighters, swordsmen, like Ray. And quite often they didn't know what they were fighting. They were just fighting a green screen or a blue screen. And of course, we use our imagination the whole time. We don't need to have you there to contact you. We can imagine you're there and contact you. But if you don't know what's coming at you, for example, Ewan would maybe be oppressed by some terrible force, and he wouldn't know whether this was occasion to shrug it off or to take it really seriously because it was a matter of life and death. And those kind of things for an actor can be quite hard. So you try it several ways, and then you just have to surrender to the editing. And then if you see a bit later on, and you think, oh my God, if I'd known that was coming at me, I would have reacted and acted in a completely different way. So in that way, digital technology initially is disempowering. So in a sense, I know that Ewan Fox particularly, sometimes he was making a few steps forward, but more steps backward as a result of that. But it's exciting, and the thing is, there seems to be a kickback now to people who want to make films as opposed to digital experiences, but there's room for everything. I mean, I've just done a film that was shot entirely non-digitally, called The Lost City of Z, and it ends the New York Film Festival, so it'll be with you soon. And James Gray, who wrote and directed it, is very much a pioneer of, I wouldn't want to call it the old school, but that way of doing it. But that's his choice and that's his taste. And when we see the movie, I dare say we'll see why. But then we'll have the latest blockbuster adventure where lots of things are recreated later, and that will have its own excitement. But I suppose if actors had to choose, they would like a situation where they feel they're in the most control. Of course, when you're making movies as an actor, you're not in control, and the whole point is, sorry, I keep doing that. The whole point is to surrender what you're doing to that box which is then taken away and hit. That's what you do. Whereas on stage, you can do it different whenever you like, every night. So I suppose at the end of the day, I'm going to sound a little imperial now, I prefer stage work because you have more power.
What was it like for you, Ian, when you stepped into the role as Emperor psychologically? And for a little background for Darth Plagueis, there was a book called Plagueis. I didn't know if you read it or if you, how you enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was very interesting. The thing about all these books, as you know, they're all interesting, very good, but they spin in different directions. And you can't really, when you're playing them, allow that to affect you because it's a sort of different world. It might be a world that's recreated later by the great, ever-expanding Lucasfilm, Disney industry. But of course, I didn't even know what part I was going to play when I was offered it. I met George and Richard Markham, the director of Return of the Jedi, as you know, briefly for 10 minutes over lunch. And we had a chat about, I don't know, the weather or something, but it wasn't anything to do with a particular role. And then I got back and my agent phoned and said, "You got the part?" I said, "What part?" And he said, "Oh, it's the Emperor of the Universe." And I said, "Oh, well, I guess we'll be doing it then." And then slowly I discovered who this person was through makeup and costume and a little help from George. But on that very first day, the first scene I filmed was him coming down the steps to confront endless stormtroopers, a couple of actors, and Vader. And I hadn't seen the set or them before I did it, and I was in these contact lenses which were, you could only see straight ahead, not at the side. And Dave Tomlin was a wonderful first AD. He said, "Ian, we're just going to rehearse. There are a lot of steps, a lot of people, you're experienced. There's a couple of marks down there, good luck." So I went into literally this completely unknown universe in every sense. And opened my mouth to say the lines, and of course Dave Prowse was up there saying his lines, but I couldn't hear him. And anyway, I think I was imagining how they would sound through the great James L. Jones' voice. So that was my introduction to the Imperial world. But looking back on it, I wouldn't have had it any other way. It was just so exciting. And I was concentrating then, most of all, not to fall down those stairs. And I kept thinking, well, I'm really old, so I can go really slowly. And George said, "That's great, Ian, thank you. Can you go a bit faster?"
Guys, I hate to do it, but on that note, we are out of time. We're going to have to wrap it up. But if you have more questions, please come visit these guys at their booths. Get your photos taken with them, your autographs. And that's, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. But this was great.